So notebook should be out, copying today's date, aim, do now, and answering the do now. This unit is about forces, friction, and simple machines. So we started off learning about forces, balanced and unbalanced forces, and now we're in the simple machine segment of it. Please turn and talk with a partner or partners and share your observation. So today was the introduction to the pulley.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so good.
It goes around the outside. It sits in this inside. Yes. And then you can also hook something together.
Give me a thumbs up now if you think the pulley will decrease the amount of work we do. We then looked at a text about pulleys for them to gain their background knowledge for the pulley investigation.
Reading and writing is very important in science, but it's a very specific type of reading and writing that is discipline specific.
This text is going to help us with our pulley experiment.
The reading that students have to engage in science is often pretty complex. And because of that, we really want to integrate literacy in a way that helps them confront that complexity. There are several literacy strategies that we know from research proficient readers use, and two of the really important ones that we teach in science are summarizing and paraphrasing.
Today our focus is on summarizing.
Summarizing requires a higher cognitive demand because the reader has to prioritize information and they have to take a longer chunk of text and say in a shorter sentence or a few bullet points, here's what this is mostly about. Paraphrasing is that step where a reader stops and almost purposely looks away from the text and says to themselves, okay, what was it that I just read? And they try to re-say it in their own words, keeping the meaning the same. We start with paraphrasing before teaching summarizing because paraphrasing is the strategy that really is the tool for monitoring one's own comprehension.
The second paragraph, which is, this tool consists of little more than a wheel with a group.
It's a misconception that science teachers are not literacy teachers also. In order for students to understand the science, they have to be able to gather that information through reading and be able to share that information through writing. So by taking the time today to practice summarizing with the text, it's helping them to better understand the text.
The gradual release of responsibility model is a research-based practice, and it involves essentially the teacher being the expert learner and making their process very transparent. It's all about process. So a teacher might do a think aloud and show students, here's how I am stopping to summarize, and here's what I'm thinking I'm going to write.
So I'm thinking about what this chunk is mostly about. And in my opinion, I'm thinking it's describing the pulley. It's saying that it's a wheel, you have a rope wrapped around it, on one end you attach the load, on the other end, I modeled how to summarize the first chunk. By taking that time and modeling how to do a strategy and having them practice it, they're better equipped later on to do it on their own. You are going to each read the basic components chunk independently. You are then going to talk about what the most important parts were, and you are going to together come up with the summary. And both of you jot down the summary in the margins on the side.
And then we move into gradually releasing the responsibility to students. So the next step would probably be partner work. The teacher might say, okay, I'd like you to now take these next two sentences, being very specific about where they're doing that practice, and partners will take turns paraphrasing.
How do you know what is the most important parts in these chunks that you are pulling out?
Something that's really important is because it's talking about basic components, and we're talking about...
The importance of partner work is to give students an opportunity to experience the process of using the strategy without yet having to do it independently. It asks them to verbalize what their thinking process is, and it's the making visible of that thinking process that partner work is a perfect opportunity for.
Pulleys are used most of the time to lift and move large objects.
I saw them really thinking deeply about the text, really asking good questions. I saw really healthy debates between partnerships, really thinking about, well, what are the main points? Why is this sentence a main point and not this sentence?
So we should say pulleys usually move large objects. Are most commonly used to move and lift large objects.
I think that we should include something.
And then to further release the responsibility, the idea is that eventually students will be applying this strategy independently.
Haley, nice and loud, can you read your summary?
Pulleys make humans work easier to lift objects. Pulleys have a wheel and a groove, which a rope is run through to help lift the objects, especially when there are multiple pulleys.
So we talked earlier and you said that pulleys would change the amount of work that somebody did. After reading this, do you still agree with that statement?
So now I know that there is the more pulleys, the less force it'll take to lift the object. But I think there's going to be a greater distance.
So if there's less force and a greater distance, so can somebody else remind us what that is called in science? Amrita, nice and loud.
A trade-off.
A trade-off. And what have we learned so far about how trade-offs affect the amount of work that the simple machine does? Haley?
It keeps the work the same.
It keeps the work the same.
Not only is it a tool for the student to monitor comprehension, it's a tool for the teacher to engage in formative assessment and to have some evidence about whether or not that student understands.
Well, I had a question about the word amplification.
Amplification. Okay, so the root of amplification is the word amplify.
The goal is to deepen their science content understanding through giving them strategies for reading complex science text.
Did summarizing help you to understand this text about pulleys?
Summarizing the text helped me understand it because I learned the main points of the pulley, like the components and the most important facts of what the pulley does.
I said that summarizing this text helped me because I could get background knowledge on the pulley that I could possibly use in the future after the experiment. But I also put it in my terms so I can understand the tricky words and concepts better.
For me, teaching summarizing and paraphrasing is giving a new dimension to my work as a science teacher. I'm able to let them have more control over their experiments because they have such a deeper background knowledge about the science content that the experiment is about. So they're able to create their own experiments now, whereas in the past, before I taught these literacy strategies, I would give them everything they need. I would give them their procedures and everything. But now that they have such a deeper understanding, they create all of those things for themselves.